As I was listening to Latifah, I remembered one of these basic rules that I have when I speak, and one of them is not to follow preachers or lawyers. I think I'll add Latifah to that. Tremendous speaker, and I can understand why she was chosen to lead the Lawyers Committee. My time with the Lawyer Committee goes back many, many years, certainly to the 1970s, but it was in Chicago where I started practicing, and that was my first sort of introduction to the Lawyers Committee. There I was working for Jenner and Block there in Chicago, and it was very important to them, their pro bono component, very much like some of the firms here. And I can remember Jim Tucker, who was there, and Tom Sullivan, who were very much interested in making sure that the firm gave back and that they participated in the great social issues of the day. I was very moved by that, and not that I didn't have it already, because I had gone to law school in large measure because of it. I'm certainly a product of the 60s and watching the civil rights movement unfold, very much taken aback by the great men of that day and the great women of that day and the great lawyers. For me, it was this sense that when it's my time, and this was in the 1970s, and I think the first major opportunity I had to do that was the Melvin Black case, which I will talk more about in terms of its sort of importance to me, was that I could see lawyers like yourself, although a different era, different generation, some of you have been part of that, who really had a real commitment to move the social order. And I understood that much of what has happened in life, if you go back through the great past centuries, certainly through the issues around the Civil War and on forward, that there were always lawyers at the forefront, fighting, banging their heads. Many great black lawyers in the South were there fighting, banging their heads, trying to move the social order, not winning all the time, but eventually contributing to the movement. And I always say that each generation has a responsibility. They have a responsibility to move the social order in a way that is better than when they started. And I think each of us in this room see that as a personal mission for each other. The Lawyers Committee in its collectiveness does outstanding work. I'm always amazed by the various types of cases that they're involved in, but I'm amazed when I see the Center for Constitutional Law and the great work that was done around Guantanamo Bay and those inmates. I'm always impressed, and I know that the lawyers with profound commitments can move the country in ways that maybe politicians cannot, but they can lead the parade. And so for me, over the last, since Melvin Black, and I'll tell you why that's so significant to me. In 1979, I was going across the Bay Bridge on my way to a political function. I think Leo McCarthy had a position at the time, and I was going to attend it. And I hear over the radio that people were shooting at people crossing the bridge, or an overpass. Well, I had just passed that area, so I was quite happy it wasn't me. But then the next day, I heard about this 14-year-old boy that had been shot and killed. Now you think, because now we have Oscar Grant, but before there was Oscar Grant, there was Melvin Black. And he was shot and killed, a number of shots in the back as he was running away. And for reasons that I still don't know to this day, I was hired by the city. I'm sure they regretted it, but I was hired by the city to do an independent investigation. And this was, a great challenge. I was 33 years old at the time. I had just left the DA's office. I just started my practice. And I was confronted with a fact pattern and a decision to make, whether or not I was going to make the statement that this shooting was unlawful and unjustified under the facts that I knew. This had to be done at a time when the U.S. Attorney, and at the time it was Billy Hunter, who was a personal friend of mine, had said that the shooting was justified. The police department had said it was justified. The city attorney's office had said it was justified. And the state's attorney's office. And there I was. And I made that call. And I remember when I had to issue that report, that I knew it was going to change my life forever. And I was prepared to do that, and I did. And I only say that during the course of everyone's life, there will come a moment when you will have to decide. And your destiny, in large measure, will be determined by the decision you make. And when I made that call, it put me on a trajectory that allowed me to do the kind of work that I have done. And I've been involved in police litigation since then. And the reason why I find it is most important to me, because unfortunately, one of the most despised aspects of this whole society is young African American males with criminal records. And they have no champion. And you're not their champion either. The champion for them is if no one cares about them and no one gives them access. So when they come to me, I know that I have to give them access. When they are beaten by the police, when they are arrested for reasons that are unjustified, or they're shot and killed, and the police have their stories, because I know that police will always seek to justify whatever they've done. And it's really up to me and people like me to unravel that fact pattern, to bring some justice to that family. And I have calls every day. My phone rings probably every 2 minutes about some call of someone in the Bay Area. When Latifah was talking about asylum, I had a young man in my office today, a young man from Ghana, who was driving his car, and he got stopped by the police because they thought he had the wrong registration. Where it turns out he had just bought the car and the registration was in the back window. When he finally pulls over, before they put guns on him, and he tried to explain he was beaten. And he was beaten. This was a young man who had been here from Ghana. I said to him during a settlement conference, I says, "Welcome to America." And that's a hard concept, because he came here with like many of the people who come from other countries, with this sense of hope that there's freedom here and there's opportunity here. But they didn't realize when they get here that they're not an African. They're an African, a black African. And that in and of itself has its own connotations, and the system reacts to you because of that. I sent many of you got this. I wrote an article after the Professor Gates issue with the officer. And I know that there was this whole controversy about this being racial profiling. Well, to me, that wasn't racial profiling, because obviously the officer had a right to be there. But what's happened afterwards was the most telling aspect of it all, because that officer could have literally walked away. Could have walked away after he found out that it was his house. But he didn't do that. He wanted to show that person that he was in control, and it didn't matter who he was. He's in a place where Harvard guy. So I try to tell all African American men, it doesn't really matter ever. It doesn't matter what you are or who you are. You have to be careful about what you are. And if you're an African American male, that you stand a chance, for whatever reasons, unjustified or not, of being humiliated, beaten up, and abused. And then you are placed in a position where you have to then go defend yourself, and you had not caused this problem.